Hello, and today I bring you an interview with Professor Mikko Paunio, who is a Finnish public health specialist and adjunct professor of epidemiology. His recent remarks on the potential legalization of illegal migration by a move at the United Nations touches on a broader agenda of Agenda 2030 and the displacement of what he sees as genuine public health measures with a darker agenda moving towards the globalism, including that of the World Economic Forum. Hello, Professor Paunio. Thank you for talking to me.
Thank you for having me.
To speak to the first issue, turning to the meeting at the United Nations this Monday, is there any basis to the idea that this is a move towards the legalization of illegal migration?
It is clearly in the first chapter of the treaty where it is put. It's in form of political legalization, and this is not a binding document, as they say, but this has strong political binding nature, and there is this in action 6 in the first chapter, sub-action E tells it all, that no longer there is new nomenclature. It's not illegal immigration or migration. It is irregular migration. Crucial words in this subsection E, which says that absolute human rights are to be granted for those irrespective of the immigration status. So this is a very clear sign that this legalizes illegal migration.
Yes, as you say, in the first chapter of its Sustainable Development and Finance of the UN Future Agreement, which apparently was signed on Monday, Action 6 says that Finland must ensure the safety, dignity and human rights of all migrants, regardless of their immigration status, which you charge is politically legitimizing illegal migration, introducing a new term, which is irregular migration. You further stated that this has displaced public health measures that you had a hand in authoring that would have delivered millions of people from waterborne sickness and disease. Why would they do this? Is that true?
It is true, but the whole problem is with these sustainable development goals, and especially sustainable development goal 6. There used to be in the center of development agenda until 1980s, it was water, sanitation, and hygiene. This is a holy trinity of public health promotion. But because there is this climate crisis, imagined climate crisis, they have dropped hygiene, because if you want to really promote it in urban areas, hygienic principles, you need a lot of water, and then you need sewerage. But what is most crucial from this new development agenda perspective is that you need a power grid to support this system. And now that we have this polycrisis, as the World Economic Forum states, then you cannot have realistically, for example, in sub-Saharan Africa, power grids in urban areas, at least with the current development organizations, World Bank, etc. It is forbidden.
But you state quite clearly that you believe that these so-called polycrises are in fact a fiction that have been confected according to an agenda that you say is inspired by occult beliefs. You've described severally theosophical gossip literature as inspiring the World Economic Forum's philosophy of environmental commitments, which have displaced genuine concerns about public health and mass migration with its own agenda. Could you tell us more about that?
I realized that I'm not alone. There is James Lindsay. You probably know him as well, perhaps the most renowned woke critic in the world, but he is saying exactly the same thing. And the upper echelons of the United Nations and World Economic Forum is infested with this Gnostic theology. They have sort of built this narrative over the past 60 years or so, which is based on the original writings of the Club of Rome and etc., etc. But for example, Club of Rome, Finland's chapter is full of these theosophical thinkers, and I have written extensively about them. And then there is this key figure, which James Lindsay tells a lot about, was this United Nations philosopher called Richard Miller, originally a Belgian guy, who died in 2010. But he, in the turn of the millennium, he sent a series of letters to General Secretary of United Nations, and in these letters he wrote about the need for this great transformation. And in one of the letters he said that he believes that it will be this new Reich will be 1,000-year Reich, and this new transformed global sphere is going to last for 1,000 years.
So Lindsay's new podcast episode talks about these movements being towards the establishment of a global pagan theocracy, which sounds like a sensational claim. But having read your extensive investigations myself and reported on them, these are far from baseless claims. It appears to be beyond argument that many of these people are, in fact, believers in a form of nature worship, as you charge yourself. Is this the reason why we are seeing genuine concerns about migration and public health being displaced by what you might call nature pantheist goals?
The most troubling thing is that there might be much more sinister aims below the surface. They have to do with this belief system and this great narrative that we are in this polycrisis, and what is the ultimate solution, and it might have to do with the number of people living on Earth.
This fuels a kind of an eliminationist or even anti-naturalist agenda, where the human population is seen as the major problem that we are facing. Would that be correct?
Yes, that's correct. People are just whispering about it, but there are these tendencies. I'm sure they are discussing these matters in their secret meetings, but very little has been sort of circulated about this ultimate goals, what they have. But there is something very sinister and strange going on. I already recognized, when I think and go back in time, I was given in the World Bank to comment a series of papers related to agriculture, and I was told that it was trying to formulate a global treaty about future agriculture, and it was all crazy stuff. And the only good thing for me to have been familiarized with these documents was that I found out that because the Greens have had enormous problems of explaining why chemicals are dangerous, because evidence base is very thin. So in order to get some credibility, they calculate in the global chemicals attributable deaths, suicides in South Asia, which are made by old organophosphates, which are still in use because DDT is banned. So the global figures of the toll of what chemicals cause is over 90% is based on suicides that agricultural workers are committing by using these old organophosphates, which are nerve agents. But the papers that I sort of looked at in the World Bank about how to transform agriculture, they were just crazy. I'm not an agriculture person, but I commented them on the basis of environmental health perspective. But absolutely strange stuff. But now I understand, because they have this agenda to really push culling all the cows and transforming the agriculture based on these eco principles. And they are trying to force us to eat insects and to become vegetarians.
Given the fact that you present the polycrises as largely the result of a fictional narrative that has been, if you like, concocted to serve the interests of this global agenda, what would you say the role is in this global agenda in more undeniably real crises, such as that in Ukraine and that of the West investment in the war against Russia? Does that have a role to play in this global agenda?
There's a lot at stake, because there are some. First, it was before 2014, Chinese government were trying to lease land from Ukraine, and now BlackRock has the same ambitions with respect, because it's extremely fertile land in Ukraine. Extremely fertile, and Chinese had high hopes, because after their rapid industrialization, they are net importers of food. And they had also plans in Australia to lease land. But I think there is a lot at stake in what's happening in Ukraine.
I believe I've seen comments that the Finnish president has made remarks saying that those who fail to sign up to the agenda should in fact be expelled from the United Nations or face political sanctions. Have there been any other responses to these measures from the Finnish government, or indeed from any European governments you're aware of?
I am not familiar with that statement of our president, but when he hailed that we need more than ever United Nations, when he tweeted about future pact, United Nations future pact, and said that it is so important, I think he does not understand the problems inbuilt in the Sustainable Development Goals, how it is affecting adversely public health in the global south.
Is there any wider dimension to the impact of Sustainable Development Goals, perhaps in Western industrialized economies? What would it mean for us if we adopted it?
It would, and it means already deindustrialization, and and that has accelerated after we were disconnected from cheap, especially Germany was disconnected from cheap Russian energy. So it's and the agenda which is sort of implemented in the European Union through this green transition, it is affecting in all areas of life negatively.
What would deindustrialization mean practically for people in the West?
Closure of you closed the last steel mill in Great Britain just recently. It would mean significantly lower standards of living, and now it's very dramatic in the UK that your Prime Minister has taken away heat security from pensioners. We don't have that extreme situation, but we have problems of supporting grid now that we were cut off from imports from Russia. But luckily we just recently started our world's largest nuclear power plant, which has a huge output and is improving our situation. Now our problem is when it's January or February, we need a lot of electricity from abroad and during cold spells. But grim future if deindustrialization continues with this pace in Europe.
Well, given that these measures would result in what could be described as the collapse of the settled and civilized way of life that we enjoy, why is there considerable pressure on leaders, governments, states, and indeed people, populations to accept them? Because according to reports, the president of Finland has suggested that those UN members who do not sign up to this agenda should be stripped of their voting rights. Why are we being pressured into these goals if they're going to lead us to disaster?
There is little appreciation that the upper echelons of this globe, these people are just mad. They are religious mad people are steering policies globally. I can only guess their ultimate motives and goals, but the worldview, their worldview is just it's very difficult to describe, but it's insane.
And this is your verdict as a scientist, a professor, and a man who has had decades of experience at advising at state level on matters of public health and national security, both nationally and internationally.
Yes, we are facing a very, very strange 10 years from now. And I think ultimately people will wake up, but we are in a very early phase. But luckily we have guys like James Lindsay, who has very strong credibility, and he has already said that in this. I've listened to a couple of his lectures, and he is saying very harsh words about United Nations as it is now.
Well, I'd say in defense of you that you too have unimpeachable credibility. And I would suggest that viewers and listeners go and read what you have written about these purportedly outlandish claims about the World Economic Forum, the United Nations, and the people who lead it. If you'd like to investigate those claims and to test whether or not they match the reality that you inhabit and the news that you can witness and the world you can see around you, I would invite you to read Professor Paunio's published work, both on his website and the reports that I've written about him at LifeSite News, because his is one of the best researched and most remarkable guides to personalities who would shape the future of humanity into what can only be described as a nightmarish dystopia. Thank you once again for your time, Professor Paunio. And before we go, could I ask you whether you believe that there's any hope for change in the future?
I think so. The numbers look very good in America now. Trump is leading in battleground states, and he is our hope. It's simple like that. He's not part of the current global order. He's an outsider.
Well, at least we have something to look forward to should we get to the election. And you believe that Donald Trump will deliver us from the globalist nightmare?
He has said it so clearly that this time he will not bring those guys into his administration that were not loyalists. This time I think he will only appoint loyalists. And he knows what he is up against, especially after experiencing these two murder attempts.
Well, various leaders in Europe and West, both national leaders and leaders of organizations such as the World Economic Forum, leading figures in the West have said that a loss in Ukraine is a loss for their order, is a defeat for their order. And with Trump's vehement opposition to funding this, could this spell the end for the large-scale globalist project you've described?
And that's why this escalation path, possibly towards even nuclear war, has been so frustrating. And neoconservatives, they don't have this reverse gear, and it's been very, very frightening, to be honest. But it now seems that more realistic ideas are being put in the more realistic discussions have already started. There are rumors that some big European countries are promoting some talks now.
So an existential moment for humanity, indeed for our civilization at large. There is hope that reality will win the argument. Thank you again, Professor Paunio.
Thank you for having me.